welcome back to DSACO Up for Discussion. Today's topic is something that is always on everybody's mind. It's water safety and having our children feel confident in the pool. And we are joined by Wyatt Hockmeyer, an adaptive swim instructor with the British Swim School, who specializes in teaching children of all abilities, including those with Down syndrome. And in this conversation today, we're going to explore why water safety is a life or death issue for our community, how adaptive teaching works in practice, and what every parent should know before their child steps near a pool. Our mission is always to educate, empower, and enhance the lives of individuals with Down syndrome and the families who love them. So without further ado, welcome Wyatt.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for coming today. So tell us a little bit about your role and the British Swim School.
Cool. Well, my role in the British Swim School is I own it here locally, and so I have the joy of getting to kind of put together the pieces and determine what we work on. And one of the big things that we wanted to do from day one was be involved in the adaptive swim community, specifically in the Down syndrome community. And so that's really what kind of brought us together was, you know, I'd inquired at the time with y'all, and you had mentioned that, hey, this is great. This is something we're talking about. It's important to us. We're looking for a partner. And so here we are. And why is that so important to me? My background's healthcare. I used to run hospitals and ran a couple industries for the state. And so I knew what I did next, I wanted to matter, right? And we have a drowning problem in Oklahoma, and it impacts everybody. But if you're young, or if you have any unique requirements that make water a little different experience for you than maybe an adult who's been trained to swim, then there's a lot of opportunity. And so, one of the big deals for me was I want to get involved in helping people and saving lives. That's what I've been doing in healthcare, and that's what I want to do in this next move. And so swim was the way to do it. There's something magical about water. To anybody of any age, like, you get around water, if you can get past that initial fear and know how to be safe in the water, like, a lot of magic happens. And I think we saw some of that magic during our time together at the pool. So,
you did our camp over spring break, which was really successful. And we had several participants partake in your swim lessons. So just kind of, piggybacking off of that, why is swimming so important for people with Down syndrome? And I can tell you why. My daughter loves to swim and loves to be in the water, but this is something that they'll use for their lifetime, but also they can do swimming in Special Olympics. So we want them to be safe and to be fun. But kind of give us your intake on why you feel it matters so much.
Right. So specifically to the Down syndrome community, and there's a lot of factors that go into what physical endeavor you're going to do, right? We were just talking before the show that I do ultra marathons and a lot of running, but I can tell you that puts a huge amount of stress on your joints and your body. I have arthritis, and I have quite a few things from that being my main source of physical activity for a long time. And it was worth it to me because I was competitive. I was working, to get ranked nationally and all of that. But for your average person, that's a lot to put on your body. And then when you kind of take shape and size and weight distribution into account, kind of the lower you are to the ground and the heavier you are, like the lighter and heavier you are, the more impact it's gonna put on your joints. And so kind of traditional activities such as running can really put stress on somebody's body. And so the water's the answer, right? The water, the distribution of weight through the water changes everything. So you can do those movements, you can get that cardiovascular exercise, you can build the muscles, if you can get comfortable and learn how to do it safe. But so when we talk about what can I do is more of a lifetime activity. How can you help somebody be fit for their entire life, as opposed to let me train for this event that then beats me up so bad I can't really do much anything else after that's over. And so I think water is the neutralizer there. But when it comes to water, there's some important differences to keep in mind, right? One of which is the weight distribution, because depending on the length of your body, the width of your body, your weight distribution it's going to cause you to kind of tip forward, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as you tip forward, the weight goes to your hips and it forces you straight down into the water, right? So we saw a lot of that at the swim camp, right? So we're working on, like, how do you float? How do you get your head back? How do you open up and relax? Because the shorter your body, the shorter the distance between the part that makes you sink and float. And so it's like we're trying to bring this one spot up because it's what makes you sink, but as soon as you pull your chin up, it tips. And if your body is also more compact, it happens faster and you immediately sink. And so it's trying to work with folks to, regardless of who they are, to learn that technique is always kind of an important first step. But then, one of the things we've discussed is how the water enters your ear, right?
Yes.
So you'd arguably, leaning back and floating is the easiest thing you could do in the water. Like there's nothing more kind of easy to do than take a big breath, let the air hold you there, just relax and float, right? But the barrier is the relax part, right? And and the reason people don't want to relax is because it's water in the ears. And if you watch, when somebody leans back, all of a sudden the water starts draining directly into their ear canal, right? And how our ears work, they almost start a funnel, right? They funnel it down, and then there's kind of a point where it stops, and then we ask them to tilt their head further, and then it goes to the next level of that, the next chamber of the ear, and that's where you kind of hear that sound, and it makes people kind of shake and pull their head forward, right? And so when we talk specifically about the Down syndrome community, we know oftentimes it's going to be kind of the more compact body.
Yes.
And because of that just the simple kind of movement and pulling up makes the whole system pivot and sink, right? Yeah. And so the challenge is, though, oftentimes the student may not be comfortable with somebody grabbing their head, right? So if we can't kind of grab their head to show them, then they're immediately going to pop up when that second chamber starts to fill with the water. And so how do we create that safe environment where they can experiment and figure out how to do it themselves? So that's one of the big things that we're focusing on. But it's, once they get it, as you see, sky's the limit, and swim.
Absolutely.
The same kind of common body characteristic that causes them to want to have to jump up and causes them to sink faster also allows them to do so much more once they get past that barrier. So a big piece of the early swim lessons is getting someone to do something that scares them, right?
Yeah.
And so trust ends up being the answer. Like, how do we overcome that? We have to build relationships. We have to provide some autonomy and let them figure it
throwing
out.
them in the pool.
Absolutely not. I think
Okay, we're just gonna put
there's
that
an
out
old
there.
John Wayne movie where they're by the river. And
Just jump in. Yeah. So we're not. You're not doing that. So
that works half the time, but you don't want to be on the half that it doesn't work. Is the problem, right?
So it's a gradual relationship process that you work through, basically, to get them even, to feel safe in the water. You want to talk about that, because that's really, I think, was my daughter's first inclination with swimming, was just the fear of, I can't see, the depth perception's different, where am I going, that I don't know what this is, the water feels different, even temperature is a big thing. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Even the temperature is huge, right?
Yeah.
Because we're trying to stay in the water for 30, 45 minutes.
Right.
And all of a sudden,
Can't be too cold.
You're shivering. And as just a middle-aged guy, I remember when I was getting back into the swim community and, just being older and on the medicines they put you on when you're older, it's like, I could barely tolerate it. It felt so cold. So trying to learn in that environment is really difficult. So one of the things we did was strategically pick pool partners who give us water that's 85, 86 degrees at a minimum to make that easier. But it's real hard to learn when the water's not the right temperature. And there's a big difference between, the environment that you learn in and the environment you perform in. Right. So us going to a lake and trying to do this would not make any sense, right? We need a controlled, safe, comfortable environment to learn how to do it, and then you can practice it in the real world is how we approach it. And I know I just focused on the one aspect of the question. So
No, that's
sorry. What else were you asking there?
Well, just basically, you try to build that relationship.
Oh,
so it's not about, just throwing them in. And I watched you, when we did our camp, the gradual process, and sometimes your instructors would just have them put a toe in or set to the side, or even tap them with something, to get their legs wet first before they, if they were hesitant about coming in. So how would you work with somebody who's never been in the water? Like, what would be the first act of, let's try this?
And then this is extremely important for the Down syndrome community too. And there is a little difference in how you have to approach it, right? So traditionally, there are some swim programs, and they're built this way. It's not that they're just don't know. They're not oblivious to it. They understand there's a way to do it that's hard on the learner, but it's a life-saving skill, so they try to ingrain it, right? So some people will take their babies or little kids and they'll dunk them in. It doesn't matter if they're crying. They just make them do it, and you go multiple times. And for some people that works great. And if that works, and if it's the fastest way for you to kind of ingrain this safety skill, and you're okay with the kids being treated that way, then that's fine. But a lot of people aren't, especially in 2026. And so there's another way that works arguably better. And especially if you're looking at this as a long-term endeavor, as opposed to
be afraid of the water,
as opposed to just like teaching somebody to roll over, right? And so we approach it differently. And so fun is, for my team, fun's one of our core values. Like if we can't make it fun, we haven't done it right. And that's for any student. But what that means is you have to have a relationship. You have to build trust. Like you have to push the learner, but not to the point that they break down and you have a barrier, right? And so how we do that is through listening first and foremost. And that's, listening's a lot of different things. It also includes looking at it, but when we listen, we're really trying to understand what are the needs of the person that we're working with, and how can we make this a fun, safe experience. And so that's different for everybody. But over time, you also learn the communication, and I think you saw it at the camp, right? Well, I don't know if we're supposed to say names, but one of the swimmers, he and I communicated through spit and water at each other, right? And we had our little language. And then another one, we kind of talked in real high, fast voices, and allowed us to communicate and get things done. And so
nonverbal communication. Yeah. I mean, we had a couple of swimmers that didn't have verbal communication skills, but you guys adapted to that very nicely, and he was safe, felt his parents were safe to bring him in the water, and he did great. Yeah.
And with your daughter, for example, she didn't like getting her ears, right? And so we worked on that through most of the lessons one way or another. We worked on that. But for her specifically, one of the big things that helped was using the dumbbells.
Yes.
Right? Because the dumbbells transfer control of the situation to the swimmer.
That's right.
As opposed to the instructor. So, right, she didn't like us trying to control that feeling by grabbing her head, for understandable reasons, right? I wouldn't want that either.
Right.
And as an autonomous person, it's a little different with
She
children.
likes to be independent. I will say that.
And so, with her, we gave her the dumbbells, and that allowed her to push. And as soon as she pushed, it brought the right spot up, right?
Yeah.
So then
she
was in control of when and how water went into her ears. Now, she likes to be sassy, so she wanted to be in charge, so we couldn't tell her if she was going to allow it to go deep. But when she wanted to, she figured out how to do it. And that's kind of where the magic starts, is they learn how to control it. And then from there, if they want to learn something more, they can, but they have to be reminded, you can't do that without this. And so it's, you don't want to constantly dangle carrots that people can't reach, but it's all of a sudden we find this next technique that they're interested in, but they can't do it till they show us that one. And we know they've done it or can do it because we've seen them.
And I think what's, really important is you're not teaching them to be Olympic swimmers. We're just trying to learn how to be safe in the water and, some basic swimming skills so that they can be independent. That's basically, kind of what we're doing. Now, we do have some Special Olympic athletes who are Olympic swimmers, and they actually came, Addie Trout, I can say her name because Kathy's here, but she did, and she wanted to work on her technique, which was kind of cool. So that is always an option.
And that was a lot of fun too. And I learned a lot just kind of about how the community approaches swimming through that experience. And one of the things was her chill kind of nature.
Yeah.
She was going into the turns non-aggressively, right? Because she's not aggressive, right? So it's like, okay, how do we not change a personality, right? Like if into it isn't how she approaches this thing, it's like, how do we still create some urgency in the turn without making it aggressive, right? And so we were able to kind of focus on some power dynamics there, and just use a little more force without kind of changing the way that she does anything else. And kind of same with the strokes. There's some strokes that are always going to be challenging to the Down syndrome community just because of like the
Short
stroke were
arms,
designed
legs.
for somebody with an elongated body and long arms. And so
We're not all built like Michael Phelps.
right. So the breaststroke where you're really coming in or trying to go way out with the butterfly isn't going to be the ideal stroke for the body type, but it's still part of competition.
Right.
Right.
You can still do it.
In that environment, you're also competing. You're competing with folks with some of the same constraints, and right, so it becomes fair. So, in that instance, we can really focus on some of the elements of the stroke that don't require long arms. Right, it's like, how do you become a better in the dolphin motion, right, and really power through that, right? So there's a lot of tricks and offsets that any swimmer is going to use based on their body type, but then now that we have a little more consistent group, we can really start teaching those better. And so it's so cool to see. And I get passionate about it and maybe talk about the boring aspects of it because it really excites me just watching it happen.
I find it fascinating because, we do wonder, why can't our kids swim or why can't our kids ride a bike? And once you kind of know the physiological aspects as to why they can't do something, okay, then let's find the adaptive reason to fix that so that they can. And I think that's what we're always looking for. Like, we don't take no for an answer. So how can my child, reach their full potential in this particular activity?
Well, and it's how I teach karate. I've been doing, martial arts for 40 years, and it's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
When I have a big, strong, like stocky person come in, I'm going to teach them to do it differently than I'm going to teach maybe a smaller female who come in to learn, who may weigh less than half of that person and be over a foot shorter. It's like there's a different way for them
to learn
to do it than for the giant guy. And so it's the same thing here, but if it's there's differences, there's the personality differences, but they're all kind of faced with some of the similar challenges, right? The shorter arms and the heavier torso.
Yes.
And so we were really able to take advantage of that and build a system that works here.
I think so too. And I think what's great is just adapting to their needs, adaptive swim lessons, but adapting to what they can do and then teaching them, the new skills. But let's talk a little bit about, we're going to shift a little bit and talk about water safety. So what are some of the safety rules that families should know about?
The biggest thing you could do is be prepared.
Yeah.
Just recognize that water is always a challenge. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the water, right? There's one that's like, well, they're good in the shallow end, but not the deep end. Well, the deep end can occur in a lot of ways that you don't foresee. As a young person, I was a lifeguard, then I managed a water park, and so I've seen, unfortunately, the way people end up in water emergencies, right? And it's usually they make bad assumptions, and those bad assumptions are because they're not prepared, and then that causes them to have to make real-time assumptions, which are often made even worse, right?
Yeah.
Those decisions when you're in a panic state are bad. And so I'm good in the shallow end. The shallow end becomes the deep end. Right? I've been at pools that are bowl-shaped, and if you go to a bowl-shaped pool in August in Oklahoma, it's guaranteed it's going to be slippery down there because there's algae everywhere. You can't help it because of the heat. And so it's a slippery surface, and you slide right to the deep end, right? You go to a lake, you don't know where the deep end is. You're in a regular pool, all of a sudden your toes lose footing, and you're on a slide down. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of ways to end up in the deep end on accident. And so one, being prepared for that as an inevitability, right? That if you're going to get in the water, there is no only be in the shallow, and the deep end can come at any point.
So would you recommend, families, summertime's approaching, everybody's getting ready to be outside in the water, would it be recommended everybody wear a life jacket at those things? And how do you feel about floaties?
Floaties are difficult because they bring your arms up and force you into position
to go down.
Where if you don't have the arm strength to hold yourself up, which over time you want, then you're just kind of stuck. Maybe not drowning, but there's not a whole lot you can do except sit there.
But I mean, I'm just thinking, like, if families are getting ready to go out and go to the pool, would you say your kid can't swim, life jacket?
I would say even if they can swim at the lake, I would put on a life jacket.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't matter if you can swim or not, if you accidentally suck in some water and panic and suck in more water or try to cough it out and get more in there, you can't see in a lake. So it doesn't matter really how good of a swimmer you are. Visibility's
Are there some life jackets that are better than others?
I'm not an expert on the life jackets, right? But when it comes to life jackets, I'd prefer one that zips, right? Okay. It gets in there, it's under your arms, it zips, it's
snug.
It should be snug. Done, and then you snap it too. And just so it can't. If you do this, you don't want it to come off, right? So
when it goes up to your neck.
Yeah, so in a lake, always wear a life jacket. When it comes to any other water, be prepared again. So we know that a lot of the dangerous situations happen in shallow water. I'm talking about the deep end. I mentioned the deep end because it's something you can control for, right? You can control for it by being comfortable enough in the water to, if you're not touching, to roll over and float, find your way to the side, get to where you are comfortable, right? So deep water is an easy, safe way to prep, but then knowing that most accidents actually happen in shallow water.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because people do what I was talking about before, they assume shallow water is safe. And shallow water comes with a lot of hazards, one of which is you can hurt yourself is often how you find yourself there. So you find yourself in the shallow water injured or something on top of you. And so kind of knowing how to be calm, how to maneuver, how to roll, like already having practiced those skills to get out of an emergency are the key things you can do for water
Are those
safety.
some things that you'd practice on in your adaptive swim lessons with students?
Absolutely. So our systems are all progressive, right?
Yeah.
Even if you come in and you're an Olympic swimmer, if it turns out you can't just jump in the water and tread water and roll over and float, we've got a problem, because if you find yourself in 3 feet of water, Olympic swimming doesn't help you.
Right. You've got to have the safety precautions.
And if you've been to an Oklahoma lake, especially anywhere near where they're being fed by a stream or a creek, you may be in shallow water for a long time. You may have, if you've tipped over or fallen over or find yourself out there, you may be in shallow water for a quarter mile until you get to safety. And so now you're literally just kind of doing what we do, which is find your footing, test your footing, stay on your stomach, roll on your back if you need to, but don't get caught up in the muck. There's no move. There's a lot of challenges there, but being prepared. And one of the biggest things on being prepared, though, is getting in the water, right? So if water's getting splashed in your face, going up your nose, going in your mouth, going in your eyes, going in your ears, if that happens in a real emergency, whether you slid down an embankment into a small creek area you weren't prepared to be in, or the backyard looked safe, but the neighbor's yard had something that arguably may be safe, maybe a koi pond. If someone falls in there, they need to be able to roll over, get to the side, hang on, figure out how to be safe in that environment. So other than just being prepared and comfortable in the water, those are the number one safety tips. And then aside from that, it's just have a plan. And I remember at the water park, they would bring this daycare, and they would unload hundreds of kids all at once and just like open the doors, and they would all run and jump in the pool regardless of whether or not they knew how to swim, right? So in any group that has high energy, which oftentimes like if our swim camp was indicative of high energy, like anytime that there's high energy involved, there's a good chance that the swimmer's just going to run and jump in the water.
Yeah.
And we had to stop quite a bit of that during the camp, right? And it's a good problem to have, because that means they want to be in the water, but it's also for real life day to day, it's super dangerous because it means that they're going to go jump in the water.
Yeah. So just respecting the water almost, like, okay, this is our surroundings. We can't just jump in.
So I do like the life jacket though. And I don't preach them because it's not my business, but like in the absence of a safe environment, it's a necessity.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about the dumbbells that my daughter used during her class, but what are some other kind of tools or equipment that you use in your adaptive swim classes to help kids with Down syndrome learn?
Yeah, so one of the things is we're good with goggles right off the bat in adaptive.
Okay.
We understand from a sensory perspective that there's a lot of needs. And so to your earlier point, just about the way the water funnels in, it's like the same time that's happening, you can't see and your eyes burn and are blurry. So we try to offset some of those. So, and then the other piece is going back to what I'd initially mentioned, the point that makes you float and sink are so close together anyways. And then especially with the weight distribution, how quickly it goes to the hips, having tools that can be used under their hips.
Yes.
It's funny with your daughter, she loved that one so much. She just wanted to keep that one pack on once we put it on. But trying to help offset with that shift initially. And so using the noodles, using the different weights, just using anything that's going to help them gain control. And that's the biggest thing I learned in the camp was that a lot of this is about autonomy.
Yes, absolutely.
Some communities don't want to be autonomous, but in the Down syndrome community, there's a lot of folks who do.
They sure do.
Right. And so a lot of the tools that we purchased ahead of time, and thankfully I have, of my instructors, I have Cassidy, she's the highest level in swim angelfish. So she's gone through 4 levels of certification. Like it doesn't get higher than that. And then I have Mandy, who's also swim angelfish certified, and her brother has Down syndrome. And so she's very tuned in to having grown up and taught someone how to swim and everything. And so she's really plugged in. So I don't know how eye-opening it was for them, but I know for me, it was just like the fact that we have to deploy these tools in a way that helps people gain autonomy and feel autonomous and in charge of their situation is important. And they had told me which tools they wanted ahead of time, but that was my big takeaway from seeing it in action was like,
what were those things they were diving to get? Some of this, what were those little? Oh,
they're just, the diving toys are just, those are actually makeup sponges that we purchased, right? And people just like, they happen to the way they go. They're attractive, and people go for them. And so we have a whole series of toys though, just to help make it fun and help people learn the skills. But one of the things is for adult lessons, I quickly find out at a certain point in life, if you don't learn how to go into water and kind of blow air out your nose, doing that underwater is very discombobulating. So with my adult students, a lot of the early lessons are just teaching them how to come up, take a breath out of their mouth, and then blow out of their nose. And so articulating that is hard in the adaptive swim community sometimes. And so things like those dive tools, though, help start training some of the natural responses, because nothing we're asking anybody to do isn't something your body would not naturally do in the water. Right. I mean, obviously doing this, and there's certain techniques that might not naturally be done, but like as humans, we know, all humans, how to get submerged in water and come out of it if we don't freak out.
Right.
And so there's some
the freak out. You hit the nail on the head, the freak out or the reaction, like, oh my gosh, what's this doing to me? Even the splash of water on their face.
And a lot of our techniques. So if we're saying what's the most important thing you can do is like roll over and float, right? And kind of learn to navigate to get your way out. But then you got to think about water entry, right? So you have to be comfortable accidentally entering the water.
Right.
So we practice a lot of jump in, roll over, and float. We want people to feel going face forward into the water, hitting the water, rolling over.
Yes.
And floating. And it's interesting. My swim instructors were begging me for the next camp. Can we do one of the lessons as a survival week lesson?
Yeah.
So no matter what skill level they're at, they have to come in with their clothes on, right?
Oh, and do the whole survival.
And come in face first into the water and find their way out of it.
I love that.
And then you can have a lot of fun too, because it's like, okay, you're an Olympic swimmer, see if you can do it in your clothes.
Yeah.
Right? There's those lessons are a lot of fun. We didn't want to do it on the first camp just because we were building relationships.
Right.
But like now, it's one of the big things they're asking for is how do we actually replicate this and prove to them that because that's my instructor's biggest concern is like, okay, they can fall into an 85-degree pool where they can see what happens when they fall into a 4-foot murky creek.
Yeah.
And so in their clothes, and now they're getting pulled down and they just start trying to stand up and the footing's not there because it's
Stay calm.
yeah. And so
Don't freak out.
Yeah, so if we can, the more we can do in the pool to prepare for that, it's like, all right, it's not going to be so bad. It's going to be bad when it happens, but it's not going to be so bad.
At least maybe their life skating skills will click and know how to react.
As British Swim School, we've been doing this and I always know how long, because it's as old as I am and British Swim School is. And so 45 years of teaching swim. And so our curriculum is centered on kind of recognizing a lot of the way things happen and helping people develop the skills. And one of the things that we have intentionally is that survival week, right? For that very reason that like the emergency is always worse. But one of the things of doing it for 45 years is that we've got also the benefit of outcomes being shared. Lots of them, including camera footage of like people's homes where they've said, hey, we want to show you how good this works. And it's like a 3-year-old wandering around by the pool near like full clothes on in the winter and falls in.
Right.
And then literally just rolls over, floats, goes over to the side, monkey crawls to the steps, gets out, walks inside.
I fell in the pool.
Well, they had to say, why are you wet? And then they said, they fell in the pool. And they look at the video and they're like, oh my gosh, like not only did he fall in, he didn't even care. Like just fell in and just did the little auto response that he's trained to do and then walks inside. And he's used to being wet too, so it didn't bother him, which is interesting.
That's true. Those sensory issues kick in.
Nothing happened in his mind.
Right.
Like that wasn't an event. That was an event that happens all the time. He goes to the pool like every couple of months, they put on their clothes and he does that.
Yeah. One of the things, like for parents, is there anything that they should try, like in the bathtub or shallow water, like especially maybe some of our babies out there?
First order of business is the floating, right?
Yeah.
And so
We've talked a lot about that.
There's submersions in the floats, and when submerging, I would not recommend anybody at home doing submersions, right? Submersions where you 1, 2, 3 take them all the way under, and then bring them
back
to you. There's gonna be water going in their eyes, nose, mouth. There's a certain angle. Then there's a certain way to do that technique. Yeah. So I don't recommend doing that without training.
Right.
However, floating is literally about getting the head back, not an uncomfortable angle, but we know, maybe 10 degrees tilted, cocked, to the point that their eyes start to go back, right? So I'm not going to encourage anybody at home untrained just to torque backwards, but like kind of supporting the head from underneath, kind of with the hands open. I put fingers like right under the ears.
Yeah.
And I usually do it like this, like I'm making the trigger hand and supporting here, but you can also kind of do it here. But under those occipital lobes, it causes them to feel more supported for whatever reason, and I don't think that's what that's called. So whatever, but that little bone right there,
the ear?
Yeah, feels it helps them feel supported. You can kind of use your thumbs to tilt it back just a little bit, but practicing that, because if as a baby, if they learn the water draining into my ears is okay, then it'll always be okay.
Oh, okay.
And so if they get used to that, if the baby can float in the water, because eventually you can stop supporting the head, they stop trying to pull their chin up, they like just leave it there and they float, and then you can kind of flutter under their head, and then you can kind of take your hands away and they should still float.
Nice.
And so I always encourage people, like, if nothing else, you can practice that. And hot tubs, I don't know from a medical perspective if you're supposed to be dumping hot water into babies' ears. Like, logic would tell me no, but I asked one of my clients who's a physician, and she has her baby with us, and she practices with them in the hot tub, and she said it didn't matter. And she's more educated than me on what the body does and doesn't do in these environments.
Whatever parents feel most comfortable.
Yeah,
is my take.
But don't come blame me, because I wasn't telling you to do it in hot tubs.
Right.
But it is an environment, though, assuming that it's not bothersome, and you know what I mean. That it's one of the spaces that's available, and I'm very much pro, like, take advantage of the spaces that are available to do things that are all improve safety, but are investments in the future, right? And the future being, water's always going to be a hazard in life,
right?
Like, that never goes away.
So talk a little bit about, how we can support parents, because we're always about, bringing our communities together and giving parents the resources and the tools that they need to, for their loved ones. So what are some, how involved should parents be in the swim process? Like, do you like them in there or not, or do you mind, or?
Well, it's a great question. So we'd approached it a few different ways, and one of the things we realized was, outside of just a baby, outside of the baby environment, it kind of works better if we're just doing one-on-one with one of our instructors and the student. And so, I mean, moving forward, that's the way we're approaching it for our adaptive programs. And we really use the swim camp as an opportunity to refine our strategy. And we recognize kind of one-on-one 30 minutes is about where the magic happens, right? And so that window was important. But I also wanted to do it in a way that if it takes 15 minutes to get in the water, we're not booking these back to back on top of each other, right? And so we're given some transition time, because the personalities and the trust are huge.
Absolutely.
And so ideally it would just be an instructor in the water with the student, or in some cases 2 instructors. We like to do team learning too. And so that would be ideal. Obviously, if it's an infant that is going to trust its mother, then we need to work with that trust, not try to build trust with the baby that we only see every once in a while. And so, but generally speaking, the parents can be what the parents want to be. Right. Honestly, they can be in the way, or they can be like
right there,
very helpful. Yeah. But it's
you're not going to kick us out of the
very, very helpful is in this environment is kind of helping the learner be autonomous.
Yeah.
Like taking it away from, I'm taking directions from my parent, and even I'm taking directions from this person as much as this person's, because oftentimes it's a negotiation, right?
Absolutely.
And if I'm telling you want to do this for me, that you get an objection, right? And so it's like trying to create an environment where you decide that you want to do this here, and I'll show you how, but you're going to have to want to do it. And so if the parents is encouraging them not to own the situation or listen to the instructor and things, that can be problematic. Same thing if they're like, oh, if you don't want to be in the water, get out. Like, that's not helpful. But in some instances, they need that encouragement.
Yeah, they do.
That's who they go to for inspiration. And so if that's the case, they need to be encouraged to talk to the instructor, to do what the instructor said. The same kind of premise of like saying listen to the instructor could be good or bad, right? A good or bad conclusion. It depends on the situation and the person, the people involved. And so we want to be mindful of that. We want parents to as well. There's not
everybody feeling comfortable.
There's not a right or wrong answer for how to do it. And even one time doesn't matter. It's like, how do we communicate as adults about what's in the best interests of the swimmer, right? That everybody's there for the same reason, right? We're there because we love it. We want them to be safe. The parents have them there because they want them to be happy and they want them to be safe. And so, like, we're all trying to do the same thing. So I think that's always the ask for the parents, is just like recognize what that thing is. And if we're not recognizing it on our end, please let us know, like, what we can do to better facilitate it. But the hope would be, if you're getting in the way of the process, that we can also speak to you about that.
Yes.
Not tell you to stop doing it, but
Right.
explain that, hey, we're noticing this is a challenging situation. Like, what can we do to address it?
Yeah.
And so that, I guess that would be the biggest ask for parents, is just go into it open-minded, knowing that, one, whatever you want to do, we'll work with you to figure out the best way to do it together. Whether that's you be present, not be present, talking to them, not talking to them. We don't have hard rules. It's all about what's going to help this be the right situation.
I like that. And I feel like I know my daughter is better when I'm not around. So she would take orders from you all better than she would me. And of course, she has no fear of the water. But again, safety is a big concern for me, even in those shallow areas, because she's not a great swimmer. And I guess going back, I'm going to swing back to some common challenges.
Well, and I'll jump in right there, though, and you kind of nailed it, which is, we're talking about why the shallow water is so safe, right? And it's because I know shallow water. I've done shallow water a dozen times. I can do shallow. It's like in the martial arts world, like the brown belts are the most dangerous, not really to anybody else, but to themselves, because they think they can do all these things, and so they're going out and like picking fights and potentially losing because they don't have any business doing that, right? It's like the fact that you're good at it in this one context doesn't mean you're great at it everywhere else. And so we're trying to just help people not get ahead of themselves, because I think that's usually where those emergencies happen, right? You find yourself, oh, I'm good doing this, and then now I'm panicked, and I didn't expect that. And I had it happen in the ocean once, and if I weren't, I made a bunch of bad decisions to find myself in the situation I was in, but if I weren't able to relax, I would have drowned. And because the way water was hitting my face from different angles, and I sucked some in, and I had to clear it, it was a real dangerous situation, but I was able to quickly just say, I've had water in me before. I know how to hold my breath. I've had all these things happen independently of one another. If I don't rush and try to do it right this second, I'll be okay. But if I try to just force this, I lose. And I lose in 60 feet of water with no flotation device. And so I had to make a difficult decision.
Do you think that's maybe the one common challenge is panic?
I think so. It's that's what we're preparing for. That's what we're preparing to avoid, right? We want this to be natural. And so is it better to know how to roll over and float and get to the side than do nothing? Absolutely. That's probably one of the, that's the first order of business to being safe. If you can't do that, you aren't safe.
Yeah.
But is that enough? No, it's a lifetime endeavor, right? You wouldn't, if you had to be in a bicycle race and you hadn't ridden a bicycle in 10 years, it's like, well, riding a bicycle comes back to you, but you wouldn't think that you're going to do a great job with it, right? You just kind of have to get used to it again. And it's the same way. It's swimming. Water's always going to be around. 75% of the planet's water. And so we're always going to be exposed to water. So I think it's a skill that just needs to be continuously developed and upkept.
And I like that you said that, because, my daughter's almost 20, and I want her to learn those basic safety swim skills. Do I think she's ever going to, be a great swimmer, whatever that means to her? Probably not, but at least I want her to be safe in the shallow. That's kind of, my goal for her. And maybe that's what, families can tell you. What's your goal? What do you want to reach for your kid in their independency?
Safe in the shallow involves having a comfort level with the deep, right? Yes. There is no true safe in the shallow, because in real world, there's no limitations on water depth.
No.
The water is as deep as the water is, wherever you are. And that's predetermined. And so you have to recognize that there's water in which I can touch and there's water in which I can't. And they're two different skills and just have to be
Absolutely.
prepared. Now, can you spend the most of your time in the shallow water? Absolutely. Like, do you need to be comfortable swimming around doing laps and like being in the deep water for 5 minutes at a time? No. There's outside of going on some sort of cruise ship, like
Right.
you're probably not going to end up in a scenario where you have to just tread water for a half a day.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so,
Let's hope none of us have to do that.
yeah, so it's like you don't have to focus all your time on that. But like if you're not comfortable, to the points I was making earlier, because deep water is everywhere. If you're not comfortable with deep water, you can't claim yourself safe in shallow water because they tend to not exist independent of one another.
So what advice would you give a family who's, trying to approach swim lessons and, might feel discouraged about giving it a try? What would you say to them?
Well, I think, there's the general approach, which is like, this is going to be trust-based, and maybe we even need to have an out-of-water lesson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A get-to-know-you session, whatever. There's no right or wrong way to get this started. So I would say, to somebody who is just, well, we've had a bad experience in the past,
Right.
or like, oh, it's just, they're not going to come do this and we're uncomfortable. It's like, all right, man, we can talk. We can come meet up here. We can do whatever we need to do. Like, we can get to know each other. We can talk about some of that. Like, we can do the individual part, right? Because the individual part is what's going to make this a success. But in the absence of that, like, kind of general tips. One, like, get the kids used to having water in their ears. That's always kind of the first thing we're having to fight, is the water in the earpiece. And from there, going to the front's easier. Going to the front's easier than going to the back. So like water in the ears, holding their breath, getting their face under the water. And even it doesn't have to be, they may not be in an environment where they can take a breath and submerge, but it can be even in the bathtub doing just blowing bubbles into, we don't teach the bubbles at British Swim School traditionally, but for our adaptive programs, we often do, right? It sometimes makes more sense. And so these are things you can do at home, though, is just let your air out underwater. Come out of the water, take a breath when you didn't have water. Because one of the challenges is, and we see this, unfortunately, as lifeguards, and when somebody starts going under, one, they immediately do this. That's why there's a hesitation with the floaties, is because this is kind of putting people into a drowning position. And it doesn't work because people drown from this straight up and down position, right? That's not a position you want to be in the water. But then they recognize my face is only coming up in times that are largely out of my control, it feels like. And so if my face comes up for a half a second, I need to take a breath, right? And so then they start trying to force breaths, and that's how you suck in water. And once you suck in the water, things happen a lot more quickly and involuntarily is the best way. So anytime somebody aspirates, it's like all of a sudden there's other parts of your body that start doing things that are out of your control, and then it becomes super dangerous. So kind of getting that early comfort level, going underwater, kind of breathing out, taking a breath when you come up, getting water into the ears, like those all are great starters. And then get to know us, let us get to know you, talk about those concerns, and then move forward from there.
Wyatt, tell us a little bit about you talked about the British Swim School at the beginning, but if families are interested in signing up for your adaptive lessons, where can they go? How do they sign up?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the
So
process?
on our website, and it's just British Swim School Central OKC Norman.
Okay.
But you just Google British Swim School OKC and it pops up, and we have locations.
We'll put a link on this podcast to it.
And we have locations in Moore and Norman, or Moore and, the Moore Norman area, as well as the Midwest City Tinker area, right? So we've got pools in both those parts of towns right now. And then you can sign up on the website. You can call the number and talk it through. But we work with y'all on the waiver. And so as far as...
they are a waiver vendor, so you do take that. And safety is a big plan of care item on, like, my daughter's plan. So you can just add that to your plan and get an invoice from you to get swimming lessons. And how often do swimming lessons occur in your school?
So I recommend for adaptive, since we are doing them one-on-one, to call us
Okay.
So you can get kind of the general information, look and feel, but right now we have lessons on Saturdays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Sundays.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of options. We've got 4 days that we're making it available, and then we'll probably add a day, at least one more day during the summer as things are busy.
So you recommend a couple of times a week?
Oh, I recommend usually once a week is kind of a starting point.
Okay.
But for twice a week, if somebody's got time in their schedule and they want to do twice a week, we know that in the swim world, learning occurs 2 times faster. Or, excuse me, 3 times faster. Twice a week is 3 times faster learning than once a week. And so if you have the flexibility, like to do twice a week, I always recommend it. It's the fastest path to success.
Okay.
Like and exponentially faster in that regard. However, I get that it's a big time commitment, right? But if somebody were to say, I recommend going year round, but if somebody were like, okay, I only have 3 months that I want to do this, I'd be like, maximize those 3 months and let's double down. But other than that, like this is a longevity game, so let's just keep the flow. Whatever works best for you and your family, that's what I recommend.
Okay, and then one final question. One word to describe your teaching style.
Like, I would say adaptive, right? And one of the certifications I have in business world is I'm PMI Agile certified, and that's because I'm also project manager, traditional project management. But we know traditional step-by-step play versus real world, you have to be adaptive, you have to be agile, because nothing ever works the way you planned it to be. So my teaching style is relational and adaptive, if you want to put words on it. My doctoral dissertation was on leadership, and so my leadership style is transformational. And so transformational, adaptive to me is like inspiring others. It's being flexible and doing the right thing for the right reasons, and then things work when you do that.
Well, Wyatt, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise and the genuine care you bring to every child that you teach. We really appreciate you and the work that's being done at the British Swim School. So for more information, we'll put up a link to connect with Wyatt and his swim coaches. And really, this is just all about advocacy and inclusion and life-saving dedication and action for sure. So listeners, whether you're just a parent just beginning this journey or someone who's been navigating the waters for years, you're not alone. So every lesson's learned, and like Wyatt said, he can adapt to just about anything. So we just really appreciate you for showing up and for this episode, and for families to listen. We are so excited that you're taking this on and helping our children navigate this process. So
well, thanks for having me. Yeah. And like I mentioned this at the swim camp, but it was such a transformational experience, I think, for everybody involved. Whether it was the parents, the students, me and my staff. Like I didn't talk to anybody that walked away from that without just having been touched and had some aha moment.
It was eye-opening for me, and like you said, 75% of the world's water. We got to make sure we're safe around it. But for families out there, please share this episode to anybody that could use it, not just for individuals with Down syndrome, because water safety is so important. So leave a review so more people can find our community, and never stop asking those questions, because an informed parent is a child's greatest advocate. So thank you so much for listening. Take care.